Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Hometown Cable, our program again called What's Going On Here. And sitting here on my left today, for the first time in a long time, is Calvin Castine, Hometown Cable himself. My name is Bob Venn. Sam Castine is running the video this morning. So we are here to do a story this morning on a book that's called the Souvenir Industrial Edition of Plattsburgh. Book was originally printed in 1897. Shows a lot of pictures of old Plattsburgh, people in Plattsburgh. And the book was reprinted, and I've forgotten the year now, I think it's 1985, or maybe I can find that inside.
Sure, it says.
It was reprinted by the...
78.
Okay, in 78 by the corner bookstore in Plattsburgh, a young lady by the name of Nancy Donahoe, whose maiden name was Rao, and part of the Rao Ford people is it Roe or Rao? I forget now.
Rao.
It's Rao of Ellenburg. She told me one time when I was in to see her.
The Champlain people are Roes.
Okay, they're the Raos.
Kansas Corners, Ellenburg, they're Raos.
They're Raos.
They're Raos.
And so we're going to be talking with her later, and she's busy this week, so we're starting this off and show you some pictures, and we'll get to her later and ask how she came about putting this out. This is a soft cover. There is a hardcover edition that limited.
I was talking with her yesterday about
Yeah.
it, and the hardcover has been sold out. She also had another one with a nice, real fancy cover that was sold out. They had 2,500 of these printed up back in 78, and as of yesterday she had about 400 remaining. So I would think once this show gets on TV that those 400 are going to be gobbled up pretty quickly. So anybody who lives in this area, particularly the people in Plattsburgh, there's a book from 100 years ago, I think they would want it.
Yep, and it's just full of pictures, see, of old Plattsburgh. We're going to talk about some and show you some, but it's just got all kinds of pictures.
Most of what you'll see today will be pictures. You'll be seeing as little as possible of Bob and I, and we'll try to focus on the pictures which I'll be inserting after we're done taping this segment.
What that means is he's going to take these individual pictures and put them over the top of us, and you won't see us, but you'll be seeing the pictures. You'll hear the same voice as we're doing today. It's a lot of work. You did that originally with the Finneys.
Well, I do it every time I make a commercial, but yeah, the biggest project we've done so far would probably be the John Deere days that we did with my father, Lyles Trombley, and Gary Finney.
Mm-hmm. Okay. With that in mind, did she give you a price on these? We'll get that later in the show.
Unbelievably, Bob, $9.95.
Okay.
I can't believe that they would sell them that cheap. And originally they were selling them for less than that. They were selling them below cost for a while, I guess. But $9.95, it's incredible.
Right. If you want to buy a present for somebody, this is it right here.
You can buy one for Bob too, because he lost his. This is my copy.
Yes, this is his copy. And to make sure it's his copy, look at it. Even put up to the top right there. See that? Calvin Castine when he loaned it to me. See?
I put it in pen too, so you can erase it.
I've got mine. It's a big book. It's hard to put on a shelf to stand up or anything, so I've got it laying down under something else. I don't think it's too far, but I just don't have it. My wife bought me this, and there are several down there. We'll be talking with Nancy about the book. All right, we're going to start off. You got some ideas how we're going to...
Well, we should point out that I think I bought my copy probably around 1992 or so. And I thought it'd be something nice for us to do, and I thought, 97 is so far away, we'd do it before now. And all of a sudden I started looking at the calendar this year, and I realized if we were going to do the story on this book, this was the year to do it. So that's why we're doing this story now on the 100th anniversary of this 1897 book. I've got several things marked off in there that I think we ought to mention, and I know Sam's anxious to take a break, so probably the first thing we'll do right now is take a break so we can run a commercial.
What's Sam's last name?
I don't know.
It's Calvin's brother Sam. We'll be right back. We'll start off here that in the first of all it was a production of Plattsburgh Daily Press, which was the paper in Plattsburgh, at least one of them at that time. There were two papers in Plattsburgh. at least later in early 1900s, the Plattsburgh Press and the Plattsburgh Republican. It merged years later to become the Press Republican.
And then years later, they took the Plattsburgh off of it. And
Yes.
now it's just the Press Republican.
Because it's now become a
Ticonderoga, Malone, Saranac Lake. We'll give you a little bit of coverage, other local areas paper.
It was edited and published by Lansing and Son, Sentinel Building, Clinton Street in Plattsburgh, New York. Now, publishers does not mean the printer. They edited it for the other people. Published just means they sold it. It's been published by somebody.
Well, I would think that the press
press
is
was
owned by that company.
Probably because they have the same address. All right. By way of preface, we have for some time felt that the many attractions and advantages of Plattsburgh should be presented to the outside world in a pleasing and substantial form. We have endeavored to produce a work that will be a credit to our village, a village now in 1897. And there was a president who was the head of the village of Plattsburgh. While it is impossible in the space at our disposal to do full justice to the subjects treated, yet we have, to the best of our ability, made a fair presentation of Plattsburgh's scenic attractions, its historical associations, its industries and institutions, its churches, residents and public buildings, its public men, and in general a description of our charming city and its advantages as a home, a summer resort, and a desirable location for manufacturing enterprises of any nature. And I guess the first picture we might look at, and Calvin, I'm in the behind this now, you could explain what this is.
Well, we're going to be inserting a picture, Bob, so we have
Okay, well, we got to talk about it? Okay.
We can talk
okay,
about
we
it.
can talk about it. The picture we're going to be looking at here is the Trinity Park in Plattsburgh, looking west. On the left is the Cumberland Hotel, called the Cumberland House at that time. Trinity Park with the fountain, and the courthouse straight ahead with the point on the top.
And of course, Cumberland Hotel was burnt a few years back.
Right.
Maybe must be close to 30 years ago now.
Yes, and one of the interesting things about the Cumberland in our area is that it was owned by Bob Dooley. Bob Dooley was the last owner of the Cumberland Hotel, and Bob Dooley owned the Champlain Creameries, and his son today, is it Don? Donald?
Don.
Don is got his own real estate business in Plattsburgh and was recently on Hometown Cable on the
On North Country Commerce.
North Country Commerce show. Exactly. Description of the city. The visitors to Plattsburgh now enters a large and growing town, beautiful in situation with broad and smooth streets, many of them well shaded, adorned with elegant residences and public buildings, filled with active and enterprising business interests, including several banks and stores in every department of trade, providing all necessary comforts, luxuries of life, fully equipped with fine hotels, churches, schools, theaters, and other agencies to stimulate and strengthen all that goes to make up the general intelligence of the people and the highest form of civilization, and provided with trolley streetcars and electric lights. It is the metropolis of northeastern New York, gathering to itself the traffic of the great farming district around it. Goes on to talk a little bit here about, there's a picture of the corner of Brinkerhoff and Margaret Street, the picture you're looking at now, and that's looking at Margaret Street with your back to the west.
Mentions a place of worship. There are 8 of them. Let's see, 2 Presbyterians, 2 Roman Catholic, 1 Methodist, 1 Episcopal, 1 Baptist, and a Jewish synagogue. There's also a flourishing YMCA, and of course we just did a story with Kevin Killeen and the YMCA, and they hold frequent meetings, and it's large and commodious.
That's a great, we don't use that word anymore.
Commodious makes you think of a commode.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Which includes a library and reading room and a special room for the boys.
Right. Talking about the trees, the next picture you see looks at Broad Street, and I guess that's looking west, and you're probably right in front of St. John's Church, looking west, and look at all the trees that were in the picture. It's too bad the way we've lost trees, including Plattsburgh.
A lot of those trees, I was thinking there's some elms there, and I think some of them might be elms, and of course there aren't too many elms around.
They're gone.
Yeah.
The other, if we look now, the next picture is a picture of Oak Street looking north, and you're right in front, to your left is the YMCA. You don't see it. The big building, the 3-story, is the former Plattsburgh High School, and that's now the location of the Plattsburgh City Library. The church you can see up ahead was, I believe
He says the Hebrew synagogue.
that was the synagogue, yes, right. I said church, but it's the synagogue, and there's a housing development there now in that location.
Yeah, it says M.E. Church. I don't know if that's
Methodist church. Maybe the synagogue was before.
That might be somebody's name. I'm not sure. Yeah, the synagogue I think is just
Just ahead of it. I think that was a Methodist church, and that's gone. There's a vacant park there now. And as we look at the next picture, it shows Margaret Street looking south.
You know, when you look at that picture of Margaret Street, and this is obviously 1897 or earlier, and it looks a lot more like it did in the 50s than it does now. You know, so it's changed more in the last 30, 40 years, I guess, than it did in the 60 years before that.
Mm-hmm. If you look at the picture, you could tell, even if they didn't tell you were looking south, because of something is very predominant in the picture, and that's the awnings. You'll notice the awnings on all of, and obviously they'd have to be on the east side of the street generally, because the west in the afternoon is where the sun is, and it's shining down on these, but we don't see those anymore like this today. You don't see awnings anymore.
Not very often.
Now the other next picture is Market Street looking north, and there's several interesting why that's interesting. There's a telephone pole and trees to your right, way up in the picture. Just before you get there, there's an awning, and then there's a building with no awning, and that's the corner bookstore.
Cornerstone.
Cornerstone bookstore, I beg your pardon. The Cornerstone bookstore, that's where it's located. And the lady who just had this reprinted.
In the reading about this book, they'll tell you that whoever, Nancy will tell us where she got the book and so on, and one of the things she'll tell us about, I'm sure, is the fact that they reprinted the bookmark that was in the book that they got to make their reprint off of. Somebody was using this little pamphlet on the Plattsburgh Traction Company, summer car service from Hotel Champlain, in effect July 1st, 1908. So somebody was using that as a bookmark, and they reprinted that also. So they not only reprinted the book, they also reprinted the bookmark. So I think that's interesting.
I don't think I knew that. I got that in my book. This is what they mean by the Plattsburgh Traction Company. There's a trolley in Plattsburgh, right on the cover here. And that was right on the corner. It came up Bridge Street and turned right onto Margaret Street, and that ran from 1896 until 1929. And that's it right here. There's an open car. It used to run up to Bluff Point, which is where the Clinton Community College is today.
And while we're on transportation, maybe it's time to give a plug. We want to do it, and we want to do it this year. A story on the Lozier transportation, Lozier Cars. I'm not sure you remember what the company's name was?
The Lozier Company? I think it was called the Lozier Company.
The automobiles were manufactured in Plattsburgh, obviously after 1897. I don't think there were too many cars being built in 1897. And we want to do a story on that. So anybody in the area who knows anything about the Lozier company, give us a call, 298-HOME, phone home in Champlain, and give us a call and let us know, because we want to do a story on that. And you located somebody in Messina from the family?
Yes, last August, when I was doing a ball game, and I think you had left early that night to go to the fair. You had some videoing to do, and I stayed there with Bill Chase. I went to get the umpire's name, and his name was Lozier. And I comically said, I thought it was funny, Was your great-grandfather or something, your father, the Lozier Company? And he said, no, but my great-grandfather was, or something like that. And I said, my God, that's interesting. And I only had a minute or two between the innings. And he said his brother in Messina has a complete Lozier car enclosed in plastic. I think he made a box for it or something. So we're going to try to see him. And the Lozier cars were made in Plattsburgh, right across from the BFD mill, or what they call now, Georgia Pacific. On the left-hand side, on the lake side of the building, there's a street called the Lozier Place. That's where I thought it was, but it isn't. It was right there. And we'll be doing more of that. And if you, like you say, they made motors, I believe. They made race motors for race cars. And they had the fastest car in the United States. One of the things. Now, this next picture is a picture of Bridge Street.
One of the things you notice in these pictures, Bob, is doesn't look like they're paved, are they?
I don't think they were then.
It's like it's kind of muddy.
Yep. And look at the telephone poles, or electric light poles, is the thing you see. And that's looking east down Bridge Street, where here it turns on to...
I would say it's probably coming off Margaret.
Right, going south, right? You think that's Margaret? No, I think...
Looks like the next intersection is...
I think that's City Hall Place, right?
So,
and look, it's coming off Margaret and you're heading east in that picture. Great old picture. Now we're going to be looking at some residences.
Don't we take another break?
Okay, that's a good idea. I don't always think of breaks because I'm raring to go. There's some people who get tired much harder, and he forgot he doesn't have the camera today.
And tomorrow I'll be 50 years old, so I gotta...
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow I gotta rest while I can.
Keep track of that, folks. So you missed his birthday when you're watching this, but are you the oldest in the family? Proudly?
The most mature, but not the oldest.
Happy birthday, Sam. We'll be right back. There's a lot of residences we're going to look at now from great old buildings, and the first one we see is the residence of the Honorable Smith M. Weed. And a lot of these we did not know where they were. It doesn't give an address. So I went down to Plattsburgh. I was in to see the county clerk, John Zerlo, and he said, Bob, I got some old books I just got. Come on in and see what I've got.
Some brand new old books?
He just got them, but they're old. It's a new collection he found somewhere.
You're starting with a bad one there, Bob, if you say houses you didn't know. I think people would know what Smith Weed House is.
Yes, well, I didn't know it as the name anyway before. So what I did, I went through what they turned out to be were the old directories of the city, not telephone, but old directories, and it was a 1900. So I looked up the residence names of these various people. The first one, tell us, Calvin, that one is very obvious.
Well, Smith Weed, of course, right by that infamous bridge that used to be there. I've only seen two bridges that were like that. The other one was the Ketchum Bridge in West Shazy, a humpback wooden bridge that was made to get the railroad underneath it. And that was Post 20 for a while. I'm not sure who's in there now.
It's the offices of attorneys. They're not Fitzpatrick and group, I believe, right there now. It's right on the corner of Cumberland Avenue and Saley Avenue.
And American Legion Post 20 was there a long time until they had the fire, and now they've relocated in a nice spot up on Quarry Road.
Right. You've heard the name of Smith Weed before. When we were up in Line Mountain doing the story on Line Mountain, if you remember, he got the railroad. We've talked with Gilroy. He's the one that got the railroad to go up toward Line Mountain. He was a senator, I believe, in the state. The Honorable Smith Weed. The next picture is M. Sowles, S-O-W-L-E-S, and I certainly would have never known where that was.
That's all right. You can keep your...
Okay.
We'll be looking at pictures right now, so Bob's got notes. So.
Okay. M. Sowles was located at 3 Helen Street. And the business that he operated was at 55 Margaret Street. That's his residence. If we go to the next picture, here is C.
Where's Helen Street, Bob?
Now you got me. I knew that and I don't know. I think it's off... I can't tell you. I know
where her sister Margaret Street is.
Yes.
Helen, I'm not familiar with.
I thought that Helen was off Couch or North Catherine there in that area. Let me check into that. The next one was C.S. Winslow, Prospect Heights, and Prospect Hill, He was a business partner of Mr. Hartwell, and his home, that was the home where the Turner estate was. The apartments are now today on Upper Cornelia Street, just before you get to the Honda dealer up there on the right.
Volkswagen, Honda,
Okay,
whatever.
that's where that house was, and that's been torn down. And in the back, that's still there. The carriage house is still in the back.
And that was the carriage house was in the news several years back.
Okay, that's that home. The next home is the Honorable J.H. Booth, who was a Sarrogate judge, and he was at 9 Peru Street. Now, that's when you turn off Bridge, heading south on Route 9, that's Peru Street. Usually, the odd numbers are on the left, so it would probably be in the area of where the tire companies are there, you know,
G&G.
G&G. Probably in that area, according to this.
Any business that we mention here today, feel free to send us money.
That's all right. Then the Honorable A. Gibbard, that was Honorable Alfred Gibbard, and he lived at 60 Court Street. And there's another picture on page 64 that I've mentioned here, Calvin. This is picture of Mr. Gibbard.
Okay, I thought I recognized them.
Yeah, he's the Honorable. He was born in November 1841. He was the cashier at the First National Bank in Plattsburgh from 1867 to 1884. The county treasurer, 1879 to 1885, and the member of the Assembly of the State, 1891 to 1890 to 91 rather. A. Gibbard. The other next home, the beautiful big home, is C.M. Bromley, and that was located at 76 Court Street, just up the street from Mr. Gibbard. He died in 1899. He was a partner in Bromley and Demeret, Demerett. His wife's name was Nellie. The next picture is H.A. Wood. I was able to find out his name is Harrison A. Wood, the former county clerk in 1895. His residence was at 61 Oak Street. That would be on the left-hand side up past Brown Funeral Home. And he had a clothing store at 88 Margaret Street in Plattsburgh.
It's amazing how many humble homes were built back then.
Oh, yeah. Weren't these beautiful? They were beautiful. Really, there were some beautiful homes in Plattsburgh. Now, this next one I had a lot of trouble with. The W.W. Hartwell Homestead, residence of Clarkson C. Schuyler. I couldn't find anything about. Apparently, Mr. Hartwell died about this time, and I used to live on Hartwell Street in Plattsburgh, just across the South Catherine Street Bridge to the right. So I had a lot of troubles. And then I was going through some papers at home one night, and look what I found from the Plattsburgh Press Republican. I guess we can get this off here, Sam. A picture of this. It's the Regina Maria Retreat House on Brinkerhoff Street in Plattsburgh. They own that. He owned that whole block. This Mr. Hartwell was a very prominent man in Plattsburgh. The mansion it showed a lot of wealth, and right across the street where Seton is was another very prominent family. Only Mr. Hartwell was a doctor. His son-in-law was a doctor, Clarkson Schuyler. Hartwell died July 18th, 1900. His widow was a McLean, originally, Marie McLean. It's now a retreat house. That's at 77 Brinkerhoff, and it was built in 1873. It's a very prominent home. It's a beautiful home today. We go on to the next one is the Vilas Homestead. Now, we know about the Vilas home on Beekman Street, and that's where I thought this was. I was wrong again. The Vilas Homestead was right where Seton is today. MAI was built on the former location of the Vilas Homestead. So they're right across from each other.
I think looks like part of that building is still standing.
It may be back there, huh?
Looks like that's part of the old structure there for MAI, the residence and such. So it might be still.
Might be there.
Built around. I'm not sure.
They said they had a great. It was a great park. That whole area was very, very nice. It was. Of course, he then I think donated the property You see, at that time, Cornelia Street, I think, ended just about where Beekman Street is. I know it really has changed. You're talking 100 years ago.
Well, Brother Raymond was around then. Maybe we can ask him to fill us in.
He'd like that. The Honorable S.P. Bowen House is at 12 Broad Street. And that wouldn't be, well, that might have been where Plattsburgh High School was later built, right across from the church, not too far from the end of Oak Street. The next picture was the Honorable Andrew Williams. He was the superintendent of waterworks and the county clerk in Plattsburgh, and he was at 44 Broad Street, just about the area of South Catherine Street corner. The next house is some of these are still there, and some, of course, are gone. The G.H. Beckwith home. I was unable to locate where that was. It may still be in Plattsburgh, but I could not find his name in the directory. Demerit, Richard N. Demerit was a partner in Bromley. And Demerit at 10 Bridge Street, and his residence was at 47 Saley Avenue. You know, that runs parallel with Miller off Cumberland.
And although it's a nice home, it's rather modest when you look at all the other homes that we've looked at.
It isn't the biggest, right? You'll notice again the
carriage house.
The very prominent houses in the back. Many of the homes on Beekman Street, as you go by Beekman Street or you come up Cornelia Street, look behind the homes when you go by, and you'll notice there are some large, big, deep yards, and they have a lot of carriage houses back there. And but we've got something we want to tell you. We're going to take a short break and
also tell them to keep their eye on the road.
Keep your eye on the road.
If you're the passenger, you can look for these.
Okay, be right back. The next picture, you'll notice a nice fence in front of it. That's the home of C. Stoddard. I could not find a location for it.
You know, Bob, looking at something like this here, I would hate to have been the person who left off that next most prominent person who didn't get his house in this this paper. I don't know how they would get into something like this where they'd choose certain people's homes to put in here. Because there's bound to have been some people's noses that got bent out of shape.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
They weren't included in this.
Yeah.
But what an undertaking! What a fantastic find it was to come up with this book in the Cornerstone. It just, people wouldn't think of doing something like this now about current Plattsburgh or current Champlain or current anywhere. It's just a great undertaking and a great piece of history.
There's one similar to this I have on St. Albans, Vermont, another place with beautiful, beautiful homes. So Stoddard I was unable to locate. C.A. Rogers, looks like he had two homes. The carriage house in the back of that is really immense, and I couldn't find his location either.
Of course, maybe place to store hay, and might have some hired help living out there.
Yeah, I guess most of them had horses, right? Too.
Sure.
And
got to feed the horses.
W.J. McCaffrey was at 11 Macomb Street, and that's off the Saley Avenue area down, wait a minute. No, I think Macomb and Hamilton are off across from the Mexican restaurant there.
I don't care where Macomb is. It's 11 Macomb, so that's all.
Okay, that's all we're going to tell.
Find it,
okay.
They can look for Macomb.
Honorable S.A. Kellogg, Justice of the Supreme Court, lived at 8 Macomb Street.
He was probably neighbors with
across the street.
Mr. McCaffrey.
Probably friends, or not friends. Now, this next one is C.O. Smith. Interesting because he was the president of the village. Remember we mentioned earlier, it wasn't a city. His residence was at 40 Cornelia Street. C.E. Edwards, the next one, is at 35 Broad Street, and that would be across from Brown's Funeral Home area. We go on to the next one is a name of L.W. Hayes. He ran a men and boys clothing store at 49 Margaret Street. His residence was at 35 Brinkerhoff Street, which may still be there. The Honorable E.C. Baker was residence at 45 Broad Street, and he and brothers ran the Baker Brothers Lumber Company on Bridge Street in Plattsburgh. He could afford the lumber that's a large house. Look at the porch on that house. At the bottom of Diaz, and I didn't know if that's an unusual name for Plattsburgh. He was an architect. I was unable to locate his home. He had since moved to Saratoga by 1900, so I don't know what happened to him.
Maybe he took his home with him.
Here you go. The Stoner home that you're looking at with the trees, I was unable to locate where that was either. Again, carriage house in the back. This next home is a beautiful home. The Honorable J. M. Weaver. A lot of honorables here. He was the cashier at the Merchants National Bank. The residence was at 36 Cumberland Avenue, down near... Is that the Elks Club?
Looks kind of familiar. It could be.
It could be the Elks Club. It's in that general area. He was born in Michigan, came to the area, but was on the lake anyway. The lake's in behind. That could very well be the
BPOE?
BPOE. Weeds Park, I guess I don't even see Weeds Park here now. I've got, I've gone ahead here. A leisurely walk through Plattsburgh streets cannot fail to give pleasure to the visitor, whether passing by the well-kept and well-supplied business places or the comfortable homes, many of them very elegant and beautiful grounds, and you can see what from the pictures. The best idea of Plattsburgh's scenic magnificence can be obtained from the Grand Tower of Hotel Champlain on Bluff Point, 3 miles south of the village. This elegant hostelry rises from amidst a superb woodland of evergreens, elevated a few hundred feet above the lake, of course, and today that's the community college. I happen to have in another part of my collection, let me just, right in the back here, show you what the hotel looked like up until 1910 when it burned.
Okay.
Right? And then you're going to do these later. Okay, then here's two pictures that you'll look at one and the other of the way it is today, or was in 1911, 1912. It's just from postcards. Okay, I will leave those.
That was before the Hyper building was built.
Before the Hyper building, right. Now, Cumberland Bay across from Weeds Park. It's on Cumberland Avenue near Shirley Avenue.
And the city is really working hard to get back to, can't say back to nature, but get back to the quiet times down there. And the downtown merchants have an association now, and the people from the city are working hard to make it a nice walk down there. And I think good things are in store for Plattsburgh in the coming years.
They've certainly done a good start, have had a good start on City Hall Place, where they've redone the buildings, as we noted when we stopped along there, just past the City Hall. That's very, very beautiful.
Yeah, Mrs. Schoonmaker's department is really working hard, and the merchants are working with the city, and its results are starting to pay off.
Right. All right, we'll take another short break, and we'll be right back. You're watching Hometown Cable, and the person to my left is not a stranger to you, but he's a stranger seeing him on the tube here, because we don't see Calvin very often. Calvin Castine.
Now you know why.
Say hi, Mom. Say hi, Mom. We'll be right back.
We're only on page 16, and there's 124 pages in this book. And we're at the historical section, and here it covers the discovery of Lake Champlain, and it gives me some information that I guess I'm not that familiar with, and obviously everyone in this area should be familiar. Lake Champlain was appropriately named by the Indians Canidari Garante, and I'm not going to tell you how to spell that. If you want to know how to spell what I just said, and make your own pronunciation, just buy a copy of the book. Or maybe the library. I'm sure the libraries must have copies of this. I would hope so. If not, they certainly should. Anybody on the library board, if you don't have a copy of this book, see that your library gets one. It's only a $10 investment. And that Canidari Garante, or however that's pronounced, that's the lake that is the gate of the country. quite a
And that's it.
quite a reference to our modest little lake we have here.
Mm-hmm.
The Mohawk word for lake has also been spelled differently, Canatary, but its present name, as is well known, was given to it by Samuel de Champlain, who was the first European to explore its waters in the summer of 1609. And of course, if you read the history books, they say he discovered the lake. Well, he didn't discover it. The Indians knew it was there long before he came. In 1609, he was in the company with 2 white men and some 60 Algonquins and Hurons, whom he called Montagnards. They were on their way to attack their enemy, the Mohawks. Champlain started from Canada on July 2nd with 24 canoes. After 27 days of travel through the lake along the western shore, they arrived on July 29th, 1609, at the point of a cape which juts into the lake on the west side. As Champlain described it in his glowing and interesting account. And I guess there's been some, I'm not sure if they know where that is. It might be Cumberland Head. I'm not sure which side he was on here.
It may not be
on the
that
western shore, so he was on the New York side.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's a nice mural of that in the Shazy School,
Beautiful
depicting
one.
that scene.
But did you notice the Indian behind the tree in that picture? If you ever get up there,
They were hiding in there.
they were hiding. Yes,
and they were
very
amazed.
amazed that he had discovered it.
But the amazing thing, he discovered it while in a canoe coming down the Richelieu.
Yes.
It wasn't like he was walking along and discovered it. He discovered it in a canoe.
And remember, the unusual thing is he was going upstream as he was heading south, which is very, very unusual. Very unusual. In the United States, there's only a few lakes that flow north, or rivers.
Later on here, it does mention that the point of the cape was Crown Point.
Wow, way down. He was way
So
down.
that's where he stopped. So he's way down at Crown Point. Point de Chevalier is called, or Scout Point by the Indians.
Then there's also over here another part of it talks about the Revolutionary War. Of course, that's when it became again very, very important in the scene of military conflict. Both armies were struggling. In the summer of 1776, the Americans sent a large expedition north into Canada. And in October, British vessels under General Carleton attacked the small American fleet under General Benedict Arnold, which had taken its stand between Valcour Island and the mainland a few miles south of Plattsburgh. And we did a story there, and we saw one of the gunboats that was raised, called the Philadelphia, I believe it was.
Yep.
Very, very interesting.
And we've skipped a whole page worth here of the Indian occupation. They talk about that. We're not going to be able to read this whole book to you, obviously. Talks about the first white settlement in 1766. First white man who settled in Plattsburgh was Count Charles D. Vredenburg, or Vredenburg, a German nobleman and a captain in the British Army. He first visited Lake Champlain in the retinue of Governor Moore and General Carleton when they came in 1766 to establish the boundary line between the provinces of New York and Canada. And that's described in here. Describes the first permanent settlement. Native-born American citizens who in 1784 left their pleasant homes on the Hudson River to plant a new colony on Lake Champlain. The prime mover, who may be called the father of Plattsburgh, was Zephaniah Platt. And of course, we've looked at pictures of the Platt family when we've been to the museum, and there's a whole...
Oh, the whole page here of the Platt family. I don't know whether you'll point to it, and Zephaniah is right in the middle, and then all the others came off, and it was named after him. It became Plattsburgh.
The legal birthday of Plattsburgh may well be fixed on the 16th day of June, 1785, when the first town meeting was held at the house of Charles Platt, brother of Zephaniah Platt. The first officers then elected were Charles Platt, supervisor, Zacchaeus Newcomb, Nathaniel Platt, and Platt Rogers, commissioners of the highways. These latter very soon laid out several public highways, which are still the principal ones in the town. So, June 16th, 1785, first meeting for the...
Then there's a picture here of the the Delord place, the home of Reverend F.B. Hall. That's the Kent Delord House,
Yep.
right on Cumberland Avenue. Now there's a town and a village. Plattsburgh was organized as a town in 1785. That's the town of Plattsburgh. And in 1787, it was enlarged and
Included towns that have since set off by themselves: Schuyler Falls, Beekmantown, Dannemora, Saranac, Peru, Alsable, most of Black Brook, and a large territory on the east side of the lake, including the islands. And of course, we've mentioned this several times. Originally, in Clinton County, there were three towns: town of Champlain, town of Plattsburgh, and the town of Willsboro.
that's all.
And of course, Champlain has become Moores, Ellenburg, and Shazy. I guess Shazy must have been part of the town of Champlain. And of course, I think Alberg was also, may have been in that original part of the town of Champlain.
It talks about the Battle of Plattsburgh, which you've heard some pictures. That is a picture of the old Moores residence. And the interesting part of the Moores residence, Moores family, it's on the corner, I believe, of Bridge Street and that short street that goes over to South Peru, and it has a cannonball that was shot from one of the ships, and it's in the house. It came through the walls, and it sticks out in the house. You can see part of the cannonball in the wall, and that's a very important part of Plattsburgh that we often talk about.
And you have a nice chapter here, a lot of it on that Battle of Plattsburgh. Very,
That's 18.
so much to find in this book, and of course that history was a lot closer to them than it is to us, and it was, I'm sure, a lot easier to get people who had some first-hand knowledge of some of this stuff, or heard it firsthand from some of their relatives, and of course documents have probably been lost in the last 100 years, are still available then.
Yeah. You notice the names of people like, General Macomb. There's a Macomb Street. General Benjamin Moores that owns that house we just talked about.
And of course,
Moores, New York. Now, the growth of the village was incorporated as a Plattsburgh village March the 3rd, 1815. It gives a list of the names of the trustees, and Levi Platt was the president, the first president. It was a president. Until it became a city, it was a village, just like Champlain is. Champlain Transportation Company, I mentioned before, Sam was saying it was 1896, and I was holding up a picture that said 1895. It was November 1895 that it really got started.
That was so close to 96.
Yes, yeah, well, we always think ahead.
For the sake of 30-some-odd days to call it wrong. Especially when you're talking over 100 years, you take 30 days out of 100 years.
There you go.
We're going to get into railroads. Let's take another quick break.
Okay. You want to take it down before we get into the railroads? Okay, we're going to come back and just talk a little bit about the D&H and its importance into the not the discovery, but the settling and the growth of Plattsburgh. Because in 1896, population of Plattsburgh was just a little over 7,000 people, and it grew from there. The railroads, of course, settled the West. It also settled northern New York. The Delaware and Hudson Railroad, came up 168 miles from Albany, New York. And I don't have a year when it started in this area, but it came up, and it used to go west out of Plattsburgh, northwest into Moores, and then up into Canada. It didn't get over into Rouse's Point until about 1875. The Delaware and Hudson Railroad is a little misstated for a name. It's done more than that in this area. It built and owned Champlain Hotel, the Bluff Point Hotel up there, which is now Community College. And they rebuilt it in 1911. They operated that. In 1906, the Plattsburgh Traction Company, the trolley company, was purchased by the D&H Railroad. And they continued to operate it very profitably until about 1916, and they were doing very well. And then the handwriting on the wall, cars were coming into being, and the trolleys weren't used as much, and they had a chance to sell it. And I I think they sold it anyway in 1925 to others, and it started going downhill quite quickly after that. Picture of the D&H Railroad Depot there. That's a very important. You notice the horse and buggy in front.
And the steamer. I was impressed to see that steamer.
Oh, the steamer here, yeah, the reindeer, you mean? The transportation company maintained 2 steamers.
On Lake Champlain. The Vermont and the Chateauguay.
Yeah, a paddle wheeler, a side wheeler.
The Vermont makes a daily trip to Ticonderoga, leaving here at 7 o'clock a.m. and returning at 7 p.m. The Chateauguay leaves for Burlington at 7 a.m. and reaches there at 8:15, returning to Plattsburgh at 10:30. So before the ferries, there were steamers, and
well, that's the way you traveled. You know, you didn't have a bridges, you didn't get across. Now, as we look on the other pictures, on the next page, the railway system, the the traction company, it shows the car, the winter car, which was enclosed. There were 3 cars that were enclosed. They had about 11 that were open, and they had anywhere from 6 to 8 rows of seats that went across. And it shows a picture of the car interior. People sat facing inward on the closed ones. And there's also a picture of the car house. And the car house I had trouble with to locate where it was. It turns out it's on Peru Street. If you remember, the Cadillac garage used to be up on Peru Street. And then it became the dance studio for the Racines. And right in the back, there's a large building that was 50 by 100 feet. It was built and was ready for use in December 1896, and it held 12 cars. That's where they stored the summer cars in the winter time. There wasn't as much going on in the area. I came across some figures here. There were 6.5 to 7 miles of track for the trolley. School kids for children under 12, they were sold a book of 56 tickets for $1. And for students over 12, a book of 50 tickets for $1.50 in 1897. The rates later were 5 cents anywhere in the city of Plattsburgh between 2 points. And if you lived north of, I beg your pardon, if you wanted to go north of Elizabeth Street, which is out on Peru Street, next to where the gate is for the air base, if you went from in the city out there, it was 10 cents. And they were going downhill from there. At one time, just before they closed, they had 28-foot closed passenger cars, 8 open cars. They had two 30-horsepower electric motors that used to have the little wheel that reached up to the electric wires that ran. These were electric cars, and they had 1 snowplow. And there were 127 light poles to support the wire spans within the city for the wires for the trolley.
The trolley was the newest thing in Plattsburgh when this book was printed, Bob.
Oh yeah, it was only a year. See,
the work was commenced May 1896, and the first car was run June 28th of 1896.
Take long, huh? A little over a month.
Yeah.
The picture you're seeing of the First Methodist Episcopal Church, if you remember, we were looking up at the Plattsburgh High School and looking up Oak Street, and we talked about the synagogue and the church. That's the First Methodist Episcopal Church we were looking at with that spire on the top. It was right at the head of Clinton Street on Oak Street. And then the First Presbyterian Church is on Brinkerhoff Street on the corner of Marion. It's still there, right across from where the old post office was in that area. There's St. Peter's Church, the French Catholic. We talked about that. We had the French Church and the Irish Church in Plattsburgh, St. John's being the Irish. It opened in August of 1875. Father Maloney was the pastor. That's the St. Peter's. Yeah, I beg your pardon. St. John's is on the next picture. Is St. John's.
St. John's Cathedral.
Cathedral. Yes, that's the one that opened in 1875. It had formerly been located on City Hall Place, down in the area where the City Hall is today, and there were homes on both sides of that street, all the way up to the Weed Bridge. But they tore those down to make the monument that's in front, and to construct the City Hall in Plattsburgh. And they moved the church here in 1875. That information is from another nice book of pictures called the Clinton County Pictures that you also have, Calvin. The next is the Baptist Church. Okay.
The Trinity Protestant Episcopal.
Okay, I don't have that written down here. Okay,
well, certainly can't skip the church.
The Trinity Church.
It's probably in Trinity Park.
It is right across from Trinity Park. It's right across from the old courthouse. Still there. Went to school with one of the daughter of the ministers back in 1944 in Plattsburgh. The Baptist Church was the one that was in 1880, corner of Court and Oak Street in Plattsburgh. The building was dedicated in June 1881. Now the Cornerstone Presbyterian Church was on the corner of Oak and Brinkerhoff, 1864 church. That may later, I'm not sure, it may have been the Salvation Army right across from the YMCA, but I'm not positive of that.
And there's the YMCA?
There's the YMCA on Margaret Street.
I've heard it's fun to stay at the YMCA, Bob. Ever heard that?
Well, they have a dance. They dance that song all the time.
That's what I was referring to.
Oh, okay. Well, let me tell you a little bit about that. It was formed in June the 1st, 1895. Formerly had been a railroad YMCA headquarters at the D&H station. It grew very fast. It moved to 36 and a half Margaret Street with 12 rooms in 1897. Right, this is the location. It had lighted electricity and 2 bathrooms. It was heated by steam and had a library with 2,500 volumes. Very important in Plattsburgh, and it's really grown since then.
In the Riverside Cemetery, does it mention how many people were dead in there, Bob?
No, it doesn't. Not in the book.
Want to tell us?
One of us ought to tell them. Maybe Sam, have you idea how many people, Sam, in that
cemetery are dead?
Dead?
All of them.
All of them. If they got a caretaker in there when you go by, you're going to be in trouble. Okay. Home for the Friendless.
There's a place for us, Bob.
Well, that's over here. The Home for the Friendless.
Do we need a break, Sam?
Time for a break?
We'll take a break.
We'll take a break before we get into the homeless.
And we'll find some friends and we'll come
Yeah,
back.
because if we don't get this next message out, we're going to have another home for the
Penniless.
penniless. We'll be right back. We have fun. Very ornate and beautiful home that's still in the area. Of course, I don't know if it was a home that was built for the homeless or for the old ladies. The old ladies' home. I hate to say that, but that's what it says in the book.
Fineless home for old ladies.
That's what it says, for old ladies. And it doesn't say what age you had to be.
No.
Now, we know you can get discount 10% at Ames, and that's for old people. At 55, it says. That's all you have to be.
Every Tuesday.
So if anybody out there is over 55, you might be eligible for the home for old ladies. That's what it says.
Well, Bob said that.
Now, there's an addition that's been added to this in the back, and they've done a nice job. It looks very, very nice in Plattsburgh. Now, the Home for the Friendless, you got home for everybody.
I mean, who goes apply, you know?
Yeah, you're going to say, I don't have any friends here.
I'm an old lady, and I don't have any friends. Which home do I go to?
Now, that's on the corner of, it was on the corner of Broad and Oak, a 2-story brick building, which means that had been right across Oak Street from the St. John's Church. And there's a little, I never knew that. I don't understand. It's a stone building. It's been torn down, I guess. It had to be 2-story brick building.
Well, the city got friendlier and friendlier, and everybody had a friend at one point, so they didn't need it anymore.
Didn't need any more. That was it now. The old academy frame, and I don't know where that was, was destroyed by fire in 1871, as it says in the picture. We're getting into the public schools now. The Hamilton Street School, when they talk about the offices going to the Broad Street School, that's where the offices have been for some of the years. It's on Hamilton Street between. No, I'm wrong there. That's not. I'm thinking of something else. No, that's a different one.
Well, I guess we'll have to.
We'll have to say it's on Hamilton Street.
We'll have to edit that out.
No, we can leave that. I made a mistake there. Elizabeth Street School, that's the one I'm thinking of.
That's probably on Elizabeth Street.
That's on Elizabeth Street, and that's the one that they use for the offices. The very beautiful building that you see here, the Plattsburgh High School, is the present location of the Plattsburgh Library, and it burned. It was a 4-story building, a beautiful, very imposing building, wasn't it? Very, and there's a story about that in here too that you'll want to read.
There's page after page. You're not going to be bored if you have any interest in the community that you've lived in. The public school faculty, I found interesting here because it mentions Gertrude and Grace Barker. And for those of us who've ever been to Plattsburgh High School to watch a basketball game or a volleyball game or whatever else they might do in a gymnasium, it's Barker Memorial Gymnasium, named after these two sisters who taught for probably 100 years combined or more in the Plattsburgh City School District. I'm not quite sure which two they are in this maze of pictures here. They may have, if they've lined them up properly, they might be these two ladies right up in the corner here.
I think it probably is. They probably are.
Yeah.
The Barker, I think, is also the name, or it was the name of the yearbook for Plattsburgh High School for a while. It was called the Barker, named after the sisters.
They're thinking of now, instead of Gertrude and Grace Barker, naming it after Foxy and Goose.
What's their last name? Did they say?
Gagnon.
Yeah, Gagnon. This Gagnon's got to go. Plattsburgh Public Library is mentioned on page 39. There's no picture, but it started in the basement of the old Baptist Church on Oak Street, organized in June 1894 through the efforts of the Reverend N. Richard, the pastor of the Baptist Church. 463 books were ordered, very much in demand. It moved into rooms in the Weed Building, open 156 hours, and they had 5,620 books were issued for home use. Library was ranked 3rd in circulation in public libraries in the state of New York. So these people who were friendless, no one to talk to, they got a lot of books, they did a lot of reading. 3rd highest circulation in the state of New York. Duval Academy is noted, let me just move over here a minute. The Duval Academy is noted on page 42. Formed in 1860 by the Grey Nuns at the corner of Cornelia.
How do you pronounce that?
Duval.
Okay.
Duval Academy, by the Grey Nuns at the corner of Cornelia and North Caston Street, is now used as apartments. I came across another picture as I was going through some of my things the other night when I was looking for this, and this is an unusual picture because it shows the Duval Academy, which is right in the front, St. Peter's Church to the left, and St. Peter's College, which I've never heard of. Never heard it called St. Peter's College. But if you remember, Calvin, when we went up and did the shrine,
Yes.
they referred to the across the street as the college, and it may be the high school. It may have been, and that would have been the predecessor to MAI, because the sisters wanted to go on from the 8th grade of Duval, and they went, and that's when MAI was formed.
And the shrine, of course, you're talking about is St. Joseph's Oratory.
The oratory.
And across the street where the brothers live, there is a school there, and they call it
The college. Yet it's high school. You know, it's the high school thing. Now, I had 4 of my sisters, half sisters from Plattsburgh, that graduated.
That's 2 full sisters.
2 full sisters. Oh, I'm not prepared for this morning. I'm having trouble. I don't usually have him sitting next to me, and I can shut him off on these. Well, there's a picture just ahead of this, Calvin, that shows the normal school building in Plattsburgh.
And they got a normal football team too.
Yes, there was a football team. It was at that time there weren't many boys going to.
Why don't you tell people what a normal school is, Bob?
But,
I'm sure there's people watching who have no idea what a normal school means.
well, this particular normal school was the predecessor to Plattsburgh State University, and the only building was right at the head of Court Street. That was the only building, and it burned. And this is another picture of the building looking straight ahead at it, coming up Court Street, and it's now been replaced by what hall? It's called, I've forgotten.
Okay.
There's a name for the hall, and that is there.
Monty Hall? No,
We can't edit that out either.
No, I know, but I'm sure I know the name of that hall, but
Yeah,
and everybody watching knows the name
No,
of that hall
that's
too.
the one we're talking about.
Yeah.
And this is a picture, if you look at next, it was sent to William Branch in Champlain many years ago, and it shows the view looking across from the building. It's an unusual. It says the college, but the normal school, but it's really in the background, taking it from it.
And they were just doing they just did the copper roofs in that hall too there a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Oh gosh, and they have their plays and things. All right, yeah, they did have a football team. As we go on, the Duval Annex. Now, the next picture is a picture of the Catholic summer school. And for you people who have never seen or heard of, or the Catholic summer school would bring as many as 1,500 people up here in the summer. And there were numerous, probably 30 or 40 buildings in this area that you're looking at in the picture. And it's now known as Cliff Haven. All those beautiful homes and residents at Cliff Haven, just after you go up under the underpass, it was called the Catholic Summer School. And they had big buildings. Was located, I also have a book of pictures on that, but I don't have it with me. If I can find it, there were some beautiful homes up there where the people came and stayed for time on end. And then there's the trolley. You see the trolley in the picture because I had a note here that for, not ready for that. They had for a price of 25 cents, you had a round trip ticket that would take you to and pay for some lectures that you could go to. It was all part of a scheme they had. Not a scheme, that's a bad word. A promotion they had where you could get into the lecture morning or afternoon or evening. All right? The casino. Now there's one of the buildings at the summer school.
The casino.
The casino it's called. But it wasn't used for a place to gamble. It was one of the homes where you could stay and rent it out.
And
there were several like that. All right? And the next picture,
next category would be the
public building, and we'll take a break right now on that again, and we're going to be finished for the day. Next time you come back, we'll be in different clothes, most likely.
We'll trade shirts.
There you go. Wouldn't that fool them? We're back again, and it's the same day, Calvin.
We didn't change our shirts?
We didn't change our shirts. But someone told us, go fly a kite, and that's where we've been. We were up to the elementary school. Calvin took pictures. You'll see them of the whole school flying some kites up there for the last hour, and we've got time, so we're going to...
That's Champlain Elementary, not Plattsburgh.
Okay. Oh, that's right. That's not in the book. It will not be in the book.
Does the name Hawkins Hall mean anything to you, Bob?
He looked it up while I was gone. Hawkins Hall is the name of what used to be the old normal school, and I do not know why it was called the Plattsburgh Normal. And if anybody out there knows why it was called the normal school, if that's what the name was, then give us a call. Let us know. We'll be glad to mention your name and what you said about it. So be sure you're right. All right, public buildings in the book now. We got public building. The first picture is, next one you're looking at here is U.S. Post Office and Customs Building. I don't know how many people know that the first U.S. Customs building, not the first, but way back, the customs offices in this area were in the post office building in Plattsburgh on the corner of Brinkerhoff and Margaret Street. And it was the post office for as long as I knew. Now you have the Internal Revenue, second floor.
Okay, the government building?
The government building. And I'll show you another building. Oh, you can't see it. As you look at this postcard we're showing, the building on the right is the post office. It's still there. That building is still there, federal building. And to the left, you'll see a picture of the Hotel Witherell. And it's a famous Hotel Witherell in Plattsburgh. And because I have it here in the old car, just taken in the 30s. And you can see the street lights here in the city of Plattsburgh when Plattsburgh had a downtown. And the next picture you see will be a picture of the corner of Brinkerhoff where it hits Margaret and the Plattsburgh National Bank on the right, Presbyterian steeple, and then the post office building on the left. And I bring that up because it just happened to have these in that order here.
What do you mean when Plattsburgh had a downtown, Bob?
Well, when people went downtown and walked and you didn't go shopping out in the malls and everywhere else, they just had another article in the paper about that. There's not really a downtown anymore. It's spread out. It's not like you...
Well, that's what those downtown merchants are trying to do.
They're trying to do, all right.
They've got 50 merchants in that association, so there's somebody down there.
Okay, all right. Well, when everybody was shopping downtown and everything that went on in the city of Plattsburgh was right down in that area. And they'll get back to that. We hope they get back to that. They're changing the traffic patterns again so they can get back, and they need this pattern. The biggest problem is parking. Even church. St. Mary's Church is getting tough to find a place to park now. It's one of the problems. So, where are we here? The Plattsburgh Theater building that we're looking at. This next picture, and it was known as the Weed Building. It was located on the corner of Marion and Court Street. That's right where lawyer Asadorian has his office now, across the road from the parking lot for the government center. It was the theater. It was started in July 1892, 75 by 100 feet. The first floor was town and village offices. Second and third floor was a first-class theater seating 1,200 people. Big difference to today's theaters. And it would be finished, they figured completely finished by March of 93. And the picture here is the Clinton County Courthouse.
It's pretty much still standing.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that steeple's still, I think that tower is gone though, I believe.
I think that's still there. I'm not positive, but it's right at the hill above Trinity Park.
Still in use.
Still in use. Yep. And just to the right of it in the picture is the office of the Clinton County Planning Board.
Rodney Brown. At the time of the taping.
There you go.
I hesitate to use the word, and you mentioned Asadorian's office there now.
We don't know what now is. Yes.
This tape will be shown
in 1997.
Right.
And while we're talking about theaters there, I don't have a picture of it, but if you go up Clinton Street till you get to Marion Street, on that far corner, to your right, was the Champlain Theater, another theater where I used to watch all the old westerns, the spaghetti and the spaghetti westerns. Didn't have them then. The old B westerns. And then if you turned up that street, just beyond it, wasn't there anymore, was the old Plattsburgh Theater.
Now, which one did you see your first movie back in 1937?
It was the Rex Theater in Keysville, New York.
Oh, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't Plattsburgh. It was in Rex Theater, and it was a singing cowboy who had a son who was on TV later. You know who that is? Tex Ritter.
John Ritter or Tex?
Tex Ritter, I saw. And I don't have much of this left in my for pictures. I don't know if you want to cover here. They have some pictures of the...
We're not going to show you every picture. You'll have to buy the book.
Exactly.
To see all the pictures.
There's just a picture of the Gibbons Institute. They talk about Clinton County Fairgrounds. Now, I have a map of the Clinton County Fairgrounds showing the track right where I'm lost the name of the building again, right at the corner of Ruger and Broad Street. The old maps show the fairgrounds there. Of course, the fairgrounds Bailey Avenue Park. That's where the fairgrounds was for years and years.
And you figure this is where the Keogh building is and so on, right where the college is now?
No, this one is nope. Well, wait a minute, 1897. I don't know. I'm not sure it tells us.
And of course, this year, the Clinton County Fair is celebrating its 50th anniversary, and here we had a
Yeah.
Clinton County Fairgrounds 100 years ago. You better not tell Bill LePage.
50 years at its location. The first Clinton County Fair, agricultural and fair, was 1819. I think I told you where that was. Champlain, New York. That's where it was. It shows a bunch of the hotels, and I didn't mark many of these down, but the hotels. There's the Witherell House. The Witherell House was a very, very fine hotel there. On there's a bank there now, right across.
Next to the government building.
No, that's the Cumberland. The Witherell was way down beyond the post office that I showed you just a second ago here.
Okay.
All right, right, a government building. And that Witherell was a very, very fine hotel. Some of the presidents stayed there.
That's the Witherell?
Yep, that's the Witherell.
There's the government center.
That's the old government center.
Well, that looks a lot like the new government.
No, that's the old government center, the corner of Brinkerhoff.
Right.
All right. Not Court Street.
Right.
In Cornelia.
Brinkerhoff and Margaret.
Yes, here, yes. That's the president. You call it the government center?
Yeah.
Well, the county, the other one, the county center?
No, it's a government building, it's called.
Okay.
Federal building, government building.
Okay, well, that's where it was, and that's
Yes.
where the bank is now.
Okay, so we were...
We both had it right, but Sam was lost. All right, now, the next one here is a picture of the American House. And the American House, I believe, was on City Hall Place. It was on 16 to 18 River Street, which at that time would be behind where Montgomery Wards was, you know, the River Street.
Durkee?
Durkee, where Durkee is now. That was called River Street, and that's where the American was.
And a United States military post 100 years ago.
No, it's been there, as we know, from about 1803 at the old Plattsburgh base. And here's the 21st Regiment here. They called it History of the 21st Regiment Infantry. Back when I was there in the late 30s and early 40s, it was the 26th Infantry was there for many years. There's pictures of the old barracks you might show here, and that's that old building that we went and saw.
With Peter Garnett gave us a tour. We took a 4.5 hour video tour on tape of the
Plattsburgh Air
Force Base.
Aftermath, all right? And one of these is gone now. This other one has been torn down. The one on the left. The drill hall, I guess, is now the gym, but I'm not sure. It shows the parade ground.
The Oval.
The Oval, right there at the college.
Oh, at the college.
My college.
Champlain College.
Oh, 50 years, Champlain College.
It's only 50 years ago.
It's only 50 years ago.
The Oval at the old base.
At the old base. And that is a series of county government people. Baker. I didn't show many of these, Calvin.
No.
All right, we'll skip through these. You can look through these. There's Mr. Gibbard. My next note I made was on page 75.
Well, we went right by the fire department.
Okay, the fire department.
There's an old hand engine, and it says an old hand engine.
It says it right there. That's how you knew that.
If it was an old hand engine in 1897, it must have been a really old hand engine.
I don't know where it was located then. There used to be one of the fire departments was located right there at Trinity Park, in the building behind the Cornerstone bookstore. There was a fire department there for years.
It mentions the police force, and I don't see a heading with the fire department, but maybe this.
You hear that? The whole thing is here for the fire department.
The earliest formation of a fire department for the village of Plattsburgh was in 1817, 2 years after the incorporation of Plattsburgh as a village. In Peter S. Palmer's History of the Village, he mentions that in 1817 it was announced that the President, James Monroe, proposed visiting the village in July of 1817. A meeting of the village trustees was called. A sum of money was raised by a tax for the purchase of a fire engine, and then In the hands of the treasurer was appropriated to defray the expenses of the reception. So,
The president resumed his journey. I think that's the same time he came into Rouse's Point. Yes, I think it was at 1817. Prominent citizen, Honorable Dobie. I do not know anything about him. Now there's a picture. Now see a picture of the Honorable Smith M. Weed that we talked about before, that owned the former American Legion home. He built it as a home, and then he was a senator or
State
assemblyman, and then of course was also involved with the building of the railroad and had something to do with the transportation in and out of Line Mountain.
Yeah, and of course an unusual first name, but that must have been his mother's maiden name, I would assume.
The name is Smith M, like in Mary, and many people say Smith and Weed. They were a great pair, Smith and Weed, and I didn't correct them, but it was kind of funny because that is a last name, much like Ryan is for my grandson.
That's true.
That was brought out. General S.A. Moffett. I don't know much about him. He, of course, the Moffett Road, named after
he or his family.
He or his family. Curtis, I don't know anything about, except you'd read it here.
A lot of
Riley.
names that were not.
Dr. Schuler was the man who married the.
Actually, that's Dr. Schuyler.
I meant. Did I say Schuler? It's Schuyler. He married Mr. Hartwell, who owned the old Regina Marie's daughter.
He married Mr.
The daughter. And
right.
Now, Honorable S.A. Kellogg, Dr. Kellogg, I think that's Dr. Kellogg. There's a book out on him. I didn't look many of these. I didn't prepare anything on these people. Honorable Watson, Conway, the bar. These are lawyers now.
Imagine that, publishing a book and putting the lawyers' pictures in it.
Yeah, the bar. I thought it was something to do with drinking, so and of course I've been talking so much I kind of forgot we better take a short break.
There's only 6 lawyers then. Now we have 160.
We'll be right back. You're watching Hometown Cable, and our emphasis today is on a beautiful book called the Souvenir Edition, Industrial Edition, 1897, 100 years ago.
Available at the Cornerstone bookstore.
And for just $10. Okay, the picture you're looking at now is, believe it or not, is an interior of a attorney's office, the office of Beckwith and Botsford. It was located at Courthouse Square, which is right around Trinity Park area there. And if you look, it looks to me like that's one of those metal ceilings.
Yep.
You know, like we've seen the imprints. And look at the pot-bellied stove. And they also have books around a center. It looks like a center place for books, right around the center.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hager block that you see in this next picture, I don't know where it was. The attorney Frank Nichols Hager was born in 1852, and that's all I know about where the Hager block is. And I don't think it tells us here exactly where in the book where it was.
No.
And the next picture we have is the office of...
Pioneer Plattsburgh Physicians.
Okay, these are the physicians in Plattsburgh. Dr. William Beaumont once taught in, I think, Champlain. That's the man that studied the digestive system, isn't he?
I'm not sure.
I think that's Beaumont that did that. Madden, Nichols, Benjamin Moores, Dr. Samuel Beaumont.
These earlier ones they're just drawings, so they're probably
real old
ones, not ones who were practicing in 1897. Then
right.
Then again, some current ones at that time, where they have photos of them.
You can see the French influence here, the Dr. Larocque, Larocque, and then you see a picture of the office of Dr. Madden. It's a regular home where he had his office, and that was located at 113 Margaret Street. So that would be beyond Cornelia Street. Now, Hagee Institute,
And
Yes?
One thing we did, Bobby, when we were talking off camera is we don't see any reference in here without reading every word in it for a hospital. And
Right.
we don't know at that time what people did, if there were was a hospital in Plattsburgh or not.
Apparently
not.
They probably just had something at their homes, and they might have. Now, Hagee Institute was located on Bridge Street, near the bridge. You can see the bridge in the picture. And Hagee Institute said it was a cure for the inebriate, and I assume that's for drinking. And there's also a note in the front of the book, in an addenda, that says it had failed by the time they printed the book in 1897. The picture was taken before. It had failed financially.
Yeah, there was supposed to be some great experiment on. They had discovered the cure for drunkenness.
Mm-hmm. Now here's the next picture is a residence of Dr. Farnsworth. You can see, and he's standing, I guess it's he on the porch, and that's at 43 Brinkerhoff Street. That's up from the YMCA heading out toward the college.
We have reached a category called dentist, so he might have been a dentist.
Well, the dentists, I think, start here. He's not quite. I think he's a regular medical doctor.
Okay, he might have been part of the institute. I'm not
I
sure.
think it could have been, because it mentions institute.
Yep.
See, all correspondence,
yep.
confidential to Hagee Institute. Hagey. On the next one up there's the office, the doctor's office with the stove in the middle and the stovepipe of, is that?
That's Wilkinson.
That's Wilkinson. I don't know where he was. Then Senecal's office. Again, you've got the stove.
Well, it has an address of the list of Plattsburgh physicians with their offices or residences.
There you go.
Charles Arthur was at 14 Couch, E.A. Barnes at 44 Brinkerhoff, F.S. Farnsworth at 43 Brinkerhoff, A.A. Holcomb at 68 Margaret, D.S. Kellogg at 52.5 Margaret, Larkins at 24 Brinkerhoff, Margaret Oak. They're pretty much all downtown, and quite a few of them. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 18 physicians.
There's a story in the book on Dr. Kellogg. He'd go out with his horse and buggy, and in the winter with his sleigh, and to go and call on people, and all house calls, and he'd come back, and that he wouldn't unhitch his horse and go in the house, and then have to go back out again. His wife would leave a lamp in the window, and there was a signal to either unhitch your horse or not unhitch it. I forget which it was, whether she had it off or on as a signal.
Then we get into lodges and secret societies. It mentions the Masons. There's the Free and Accepted Masons, the Royal Arch Masons, the Soto
Common. That must be a.
I'm not sure what that is.
I don't either. Societies, the McDonough Lodge, International Order of OF.
That's the Oddfellows.
Oddfellows.
IOOF.
Another one, Champlain Valley, Rebecca. Hibernians, Ancient Order of United Workmen, Adirondack Lodge, K of H.
Knights of Hibernia, probably.
All right, the Knights of the Maccabees of the World, the Joel Lodge. The
Knights of Columbus, I believe, came to Plattsburgh in 1898. So Knights of Columbus
just after this.
Was later. And the Ancient Order of Workmen, I believe, that merged into the Woodmen of the World eventually, and became part of that society.
Musicians shows Professor Edwin Clark. Banking institutions now, Professor Charles Hudson. We're on page 85.
You know what strikes me in all this, Bob?
What?
When I see these people like bankers, there's not an ad in here, and
in the whole book.
Yes, and you can't imagine a souvenir edition like this being printed today without being ads. If anybody would take such an undertaking.
Yeah, and the Iron National Bank, I could not find where it was located, It was organized in 1881 in July. A. Williams was the president, and I have something here.
Well, we have a picture of it, well, along with the Merchants National.
I have an envelope from the Iron National Bank of Plattsburgh to a C.F. Hudson in Plattsburgh, New York, and it's postmarked April the 5th, 1886. That's 111 years ago in this envelope, and it is, I think that is a 1-cent stamp on the envelope.
That was delivered 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I have. But it's in excellent shape, as you will see. Also, Mr. Hudson, I got a letter on April the 6th. It was delivered from the Plattsburgh Gas Company.
That was probably a bill, Bob.
What did I say, a letter?
A letter, yeah.
Oh, well, they said you didn't pay your bill last time. And then one from Tierney and Sharon, Staple and Fancy Dry Goods.
Another bill, I'll bet.
That's got to be from 86 Margaret Street. Later probably was just the, that was the Sharon's department store later on. 3 envelopes I thought that were interesting as I came across. There was also the First National Bank, established in 1863. It was the oldest bank in Plattsburgh, formerly a private bank before 1863, and was owned by Samuel T. Vilas. We talked about him. He owned the property where Seton is today, and established the Vilas home for who, Calvin, was it?
The old ladies.
Old ladies. That was on
actually,
Street.
It says the Vilas National Bank is the oldest institution of its kind in Plattsburgh.
That's because the First National Bank took it over. I think it was the Vilas before. According to this, it was formerly a private bank before 1863. He must have taken it over along the way.
Okay, so read the book and decide for yourself.
Right. On page, John Weaver was also, we talked about him before, one of the bankers. It shows the interior of the Merchants National Bank. That was on Brinkerhoff Street. On page 88, it shows the exterior view of the Sentinel Building. The Sentinel Building, very much like what you're going to see right next. We're going to take a short break, and we'll find out exactly where, if we can, where the Sentinel Building was.
Probably.
So the Sentinel Building we just talked about, and you see the picture there, was on Clinton Street. The building probably still there. Could very well be where the Plattsburgh Press was before it went over onto Margaret Street.
It says that both the Sentinel and the Press are published at our establishment.
Okay.
So there might have been another paper at the time besides the Press. Maybe they were publishing 2 papers. I'm not sure what that.
Of course, we're just trying to give you the highlights of those people who we're not trying to entice you to get one, but you really should have one. It's great gift.
I would think most of the things that we're fuzzy on are explained in his book, but we haven't been able to sit down and study it.
I've already done 10 times as much preparation for this than we have for the one I've done the most on before. We usually don't prepare. The next one, it's on page 89, is the Chateauguay Ore and Iron Company office. The CO and I Company office, and that's the office for the company, of course, from Lion Mountain. It was called the Chateauguay Ore and Iron Company.
And, of course, Smith Mead was...
Smith Mead was right in it, and we don't know for sure where it was located. I have not been able to find out an address for it, but it was in Plattsburgh.
I would imagine somewhere near the railroad tracks.
It looks like, but probably not too far from it.
It looks... it's probably in that area, on Bridge Street, in that area.
As you look on page 90, the top is a picture of the ore in Standish, New York. If you remember, if you saw our show on Lion Mountain, they had a furnace and a Catalan forge in Standish, just outside of Line Mountain, 7 or 8 miles from Line Mountain, that belonged to them. And there's also a picture just below of the machine shop at Lion Mountain where they worked on the various items. And then there's another picture, ore concentrating works at Lion Mountain. Again, some pictures. That's gone today. And then a scene that you will see inside the Catalan, Catalan forge in Standish. Again, some scenes in Standish showing the various tracks running up to the mill. And then really one of the mysteries, at least I haven't been able to someone to tell me exactly where Friedenberg Falls pulp mills were. At least I don't know, but we know they're on the Saranac River. This picture is the Friedenberg Mills. It was 3 miles from Plattsburgh on the south side of the Saranac River. And I think it's just as before you get to the exit south of Plattsburgh, you cross the water there, and you could see what remains, and it probably was that the old Friedenberg Falls pulp mills. On page 94 is the Baker Brothers planing mill. That was a big area. It was located on Saranac River at the bottom of Bridge Street. So probably down in the area where the sewer plant is today, because that's the only place you get close enough on Bridge Street, down in that area. And it was big. We talked about the Baker Brothers before. Then there was the Plattsburgh flour mills picture, Plattsburgh and Milling Company. Organized in 1892.
And mentioned here is the Plattsburgh Shirt Company and the Williams Manufacturing Company.
Okay. The Plattsburgh Shirt Company, I got something on that, was on Pine Street. If you know where the police station is in the city of Plattsburgh, that's Pine Street. And you just continue down right on the corner where you turn up to go toward Battery Street, which is the home area of Bill LePage. That was the Plattsburgh Shirt Company. It was organized in 1893. 44 by 100 building with an L that was 15 by 44 feet. Employed 175 to 200 people. It manufactured dresses, negligees, and shirts.
And the Williams Manufacturing Company also manufactured
sewing machines. Sewing
right?
machines.
They made the sewing machines maybe that were used by the Plattsburgh Shirt Company.
Could very well. No. Williams Manufacturing Company was started on October 8th, 1881. The factory was built, it's on page 95. You'll see it right down the bottom here. Yeah. Right? The pictures that you're seeing now. The head office was in Montreal. It was located on the bank of the Saranac River. It turned out its first sewing machine on November 9th, 1883. And there still are some Williams sewing machines around. We're looking on page, there's a picture of the shirt factory now. Yeah. You will have that maybe.
I've already seen that.
Okay.
And they had the A.D. Boomhauer
Howard Creamery. That was located near the tracks, but I don't know what street it was on. Now, Withersley Foundry and Machine Shop was on Bridge Street, started in 1892.
And they had electricity, because they had the Plattsburgh Light, Heat, and Power Company.
That produced some of they bought the power for the, starting in 1895-96, the Plattsburgh traction, the trolleys ran on the power from the Plattsburgh Power Company that he talked about.
And believe it or not, they had a cable company, Bob. They have something here called the Postal Telegraph Cable Company.
Now there's the powerhouse. You got a picture here of the powerhouse for the Plattsburgh.
Another view of the powerhouse, side view.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we've already seen.
All right. On page 98, you see a picture of Payette, Mendelssohn and Company. They were brewers and manufactured cigars. It was located at 35 to 37 Bridge Street. that might be the location. I'm not sure, but that might very well be the location of the furniture company. It used to be the Ginsbergs. It used to be there. I think it's the first building, I believe, as you cross the bridge. But I'm only guessing on that. It's about that number.
And they have leaders in business. Apparently there was a real estate salesman back then. They had land back then.
Oh yeah. Now here is the C.H. Moore block. It's showing. The Moore block was located at 11 Clinton Street. Real estate and law. He lived at 21 Broad Street. Broad Street in that time was a very popular, traveled street in the city of Plattsburgh. On page 100, you will see the Coates Music Store building that was established in 1888 at 8 Clinton Street. And it shows a picture of the interior.
That's a photographer.
Oh, that's this photographer, beg your pardon here. Bigelow and Bigelow. Photographer studio was at 56 Margaret Street. Then you have page 100C, I think, Coates, Woodward. You have Woodward here? 100C, Woodward. Mr. Woodward was a photographer on Clinton Street, 1891, talking about another photographer. 101A, H.W. Cady, C-A-D-Y, druggist, was located right on the corner of Margaret and Bridge Street, where later they had the A.H. Marshall hardware store. It's that main corner, and it was a well-known drugstore for many, many years. Larkins, you got a picture of Larkins on the interior. Look at that store with all of the interior. Was a druggist at 1 Bridge Street, 3 floors, probably right in that same area of the Cady. 19 by 56 feet. The medical hall looks like another drugstore. Was at 14 Brinkerhoff. Was operated by Mrs. D.K. Gilbert. It was opposite the post office. Right opposite on Brinkerhoff Street.
We need a break?
We'll take another short break. We'll wet our throats and come right back. Okay, we're back and we're looking at this picture on page 105 of Inman's interior view of a store. It was a grocery store. And of course you didn't go pick your own merchandise out. You told him what you want. He'd turn around and, I'll have one of those and one of those. And he would turn around and put it on the counter for you. Look at all the display cases. The man's name was C.E. Inman. It was called the Plattsburgh Supply Store at 38 Margaret Street.
We're skipping over a few because they're showing the interiors of these stores, and if you've seen one, you've seen them all pretty much, although they are different. But we don't
very ornate, a lot of work inside.
Bore you too much. There's a meat market, dry goods, and carpet. Carpet houses with the looks like Oriental type carpets.
Pike and Randall. I don't have anything on them at all that I found. There's all kinds of Valley Brothers, a general dealer in dry goods on page 108. Dry goods, cloaks, notions, fancy goods, wallpaper, 61 Margaret Street, fronting on Margaret and Clinton.
There's a lot of, as you could expect, a lot of downtown businesses during this era, just clothing stores.
And they specialize. You didn't have everything. You would have one who would have boot and shoes. Another one had boot, shoes, slippers, and rubbers. On page, then you had Stud Homes Clothing. That was on for years down there. Custom made and ready made clothing, both custom made.
Up to page 112.
On page 112, you have the Rochester Clothing Company. It shows a picture down below of the store from the outside. It was established in 1895 by H. Pilot, P-I-L-O-T, and G. Roski. Now, both of those names are completely gone from our county area. I've never heard either one of those names. It was on 9 Bridge Street. Bridge Street was a very business location.
Furniture store.
And then Tierney Brothers was a variety store. That was at 38 Margaret Street. Look at the shape of that building. You notice the buggy out front. Udding's Variety Store was located at 3436 Margaret Street, established in 1876 by W.W. Udding, U-T-T-I-N-G, and succeeded by F.W. Udding in 1890. Variety store.
And we have hardware, stoves, plumbers.
Now the Henry Marshall, it was the Henry Wood and Marshall General Hardware. And later, that was at 14 Bridge Street. Later, right on the corner where Katie's was the big A.H. Marshall three-story. They sold kitchen utensils and hardware. It's a beautiful store. Very, very high-class store.
Webb's stoves.
See what? It's out of business now. Stoves, you don't get into like it was then.
There's a W.B. Moore's, spelt like Moore's, New York.
They had stoves, and he was a plumber, and he sold ranges, wood, and coals on Margaret Street.
Monument dealer.
As Heath, for cemetery and building purposes, he sold stones, corner of Oak and Protection Avenue, opposite the high school. Remember, the high school then was where the library is, and there's a little tiny street that goes down and hits over onto Margaret, where the monopole, it's called Protection Avenue.
Didn't have car dealers then, but we had a livery and sales stable. G.F. Hutchinson Sales and Stables. And Honsinger and Jerry, did you get any information on that? Carriage repository?
Yep, there's some, that is carriages and harnesses, corner of Margaret and Clinton Street, of all places. Now that would be right where the old Army National Store used to be, just about. That's the corner of Margaret and Clinton Street. And I don't know where the carriage repository was. Obviously it wasn't there. But they must have had like an office there, and this is where they did their, that's a large building. And I don't know other than that on them.
And coal, wood, hay, and grain dealers are all marked together. Plattsburgh Dock Company was in business. There's a nice big picture of I. Shearer.
Now, okay, that's Shire.
Shire.
The Shires for years in Plattsburgh had to do with tobacco and cigar manufacturing. There were several of them. And since June of 1895, they were at 16 Brinkerhoff Street. And then they also got into the liquor store later. Ivan Shire, he was a local alderman in the city of Plattsburgh for a while. So the name Shire is, he finally moved into Florida in the, I think, early 80s. And as much as I know about garage sales, he called me on the phone and said, Bob, I'm having a garage sale. And I went down. Just before he left, he was selling these little ad things, you know, like pens and pencils and keychains from the basement of his home. And he invited me down, and I bought a few of those things. And just good to talk with him again. Ivan Shire. They were in Plattsburgh for years.
So we assume that he was the son or the grandson of this?
I really don't know. I don't know. That must be the same name, Ivan. I don't know. And one of them, I think his sister married Schubert, or just the reverse. I got a phone call from them too, or a card telling me about their sales. They were a big family in Plattsburgh for years.
Levy Brothers was in business.
There's another person that was in for years, was in the tobacco business, and then eventually got into the wholesale, different things, something like service merchandise. Remember them up on?
Yep.
They were up on up near the air base for years. Bill Levy, and established in 1882 on Margaret Street. The Hutchinson Interiors, I don't know what they sold. Everything was behind glass. They were at 15 and 17 River Street.
I believe this is the exterior shot of their building, and it's kind of a triangular shape.
It looks like it might be on the corner of Bridge Street and River Street, or City Hall Place, you know?
But the angle, yeah, it might be right on the
No,
corner.
right about there where you turn to go.
I think that building is still there.
Could very well be that area.
Yeah, and there were Merkles in town.
Oh, yes.
Isaac Merkel was in business.
Now, at that time, he was at 40 Margaret Street, and he'd been there since 1873. Wholesale, retail tobacco, cigars, smoker supplies, fine ales, lager, and sodas. Of course, later got into the clothing business, that family. The White House Cafe. Here, it's a wagon. A lunch wagon on wheels. With the operator out in front of it.
And it closes up. The book ends with the barber shops. La Bombard and Hoek. It's interior of their barber shop. I don't know if it refers to it as a tonsorial parlor or not. Fred La Bombard and J. Alfred Hoig.
Okay, now the Metropolitan Barber Shop, is that the one? The Metropolitan was located at 6 Clinton Street. Fred La Bombard and Alfred Hoag, a partnership formed in 1888. We're getting back here just a minute. I have something listed here. I think it mentions it. I don't know where I got this. Lozier Works. The Lozier Motor Company was E.R. Lozier, the president. George Burwell, general superintendent. And then on page 2, I have something here down as the Plattsburgh Water Works.
Well, we'll try to find page 2 and come right back.
Okay, we'll take a short break, and then we'll be kind of closing out. I might have a couple more pictures I want to show you, and then we'll close out. Okay, that'll wrap up the story we have in the book. Our next step is to go and see Nancy Donahue in Plattsburgh, who will be available. Will be about a week before we get a chance to see her.
It's coming up immediately.
It's coming up. Well, we're talking about, you're not going to get it right now, and it's going to be a different shirt for sure.
Maybe. We've just touched on this. There's 124 pages of pictures and historical facts, and just a fantastic book. And this year, the 100th anniversary of this souvenir industrial edition. Anybody who has any interest in Plattsburgh would certainly grab them while they're still available.
A great present, I say, to send to somebody who's left the area, you know. It's just nice to talk about. And every family at least should have one around as memories in here. I know there's a lot of memories in there for me, and I wasn't there in 1897, but I knew some of those people were still around in the 40s, including like the Shires and the Stud Homes and so forth. And thank you very much for watching Hometown Cable. We'll be right back.
In about 3 seconds, we're going to be in Plattsburgh. Don't go away.
Yep. Watch this. Told you we could do it. 3 seconds. It took about 5. We're in Plattsburgh, and we're looking at the local and regional history section at the Cornerstone bookstore, and the lady herself right here. Nancy. Good morning, Nancy.
Hi, Bob.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Popular place in Plattsburgh, and I met Nancy here. It's got to be over 15 years, Nancy.
Oh,
How long have you been here?
We've been here 22 years, going on 23.
Think you'll probably stay, huh? You think it should
Yes.
be established?
I hope so.
22 years.
And we did it 2 years before that in a bookmobile, before we moved here.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that. What do you mean a bookmobile? You moved around? Or?
Well, back in our early book buying days, we had the opportunity to bid on an old bookmobile from Clinton, Essex, Franklin Library.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to get a new one. They wanted bids on the old one, so we needed shelves at home for our book collections, so we decided
That was a good idea.
they had wonderful oak shelving inside, and so we decided to bid on it. And to our surprise, we won the bid, and we took it home, and it was like a big red and white elephant in our driveway. But then the more we had it, the longer we had it, we realized the potential it had for making a bookstore out of it. We had so many books in our house from from auctions, leftovers from
Uh-huh.
auctions. We had picked out what we wanted, and
Mhm.
we had the rest were left. So we decided to try and see what we could do to get in business with the bookmobile.
So where did you do? Did you have it set in one place, or did you move from town to town with it, or?
Well, first we wanted to do it right from our home,
Uh-huh.
but we found out it was against the zoning
Uh-huh.
rules. So, so then somebody gave us the suggestion we put it on the road, license it and put it
Yeah.
on the road. And so when I say we, I'm talking about my husband, my
Uh-huh.
former husband and
Right.
I. We were a team, and he learned how to drive it. It was a double clutch system and
Oh, okay.
and got his license for it, and we decided to get permission to park at shopping centers at the time. The rental fee was $5 a day. We parked out in the parking lot, and it had its own generator for electricity
Mhm.
and heat. So we did that for 14 months until we outgrew it. We just had too many books, and in the winter the windows would all frost up. Nobody would know we were open. We had to scrape a little
Yeah.
place for our open sign. So this spot in 1975, that's when the Grand Exodus went up to the Pyramid Mall.
Mm-hmm.
The new mall attracted all the stores from Margaret Street. So there were a lot of vacant buildings at that time. So we negotiated to see what we could do to get this building, because it had a reputation for books. It had been a bookstore for many, many years. So we bought the remaining stock that was in the store and started building our shelves and moving our business in.
Mm-hmm. And you bought the building.
Yes, eventually we bought the building
Eventually
in
bought the
79.
building.
Yes.
Okay, so what kind of books, Nancy, do you have in this one? You have
Okay.
all kinds of books, but
Yes. Well, in this particular section, I have new books on local and area history, on Lake Champlain,
okay.
the Adirondacks, and any local books that local
Quite a
authors,
fair, you know,
local
the-
authors put out. Alan Everest is a well-known author.
Courtesies of the Zerlos here helped finance this book.
British naval activity on Lake Champlain. Anything that's of interest to this area, we
Okay.
try to keep in stock.
All right, and of course the souvenir
Yes.
industrial edition of Plattsburgh right here. And we're going to move up where there's no people, I think, in another office. But anything else you want to show us here before we go upstairs?
No.
There's the large expanse of books, and you got more books downstairs, and you have a second floor too. Okay.
Well, we'll take one of these.
All
and
right.
We can go upstairs
Plattsburgh
with-
Barracks. That's Porter. Marjorie
that's
Porter.
a used book, yes.
Uh-huh.
Those are used books up there.
Okay. We'll be right back, and we'll be still in Plattsburgh. Nancy Donahoe.
Yes.
The way you pronounce it? I think we've already mentioned, Nancy, you weren't present when we started to go through the book with Calvin and I, that he came up with the idea, gosh, what a great time, 100 years, you know, and this edition's been out since 85?
No, we published it in 1978. This
78.
is 18 years we've had it
Ago,
out.
yes. I bet you thought 100 years was a long, long way away. At that time, that's 18
Right,
years ago.
right.
Absolutely. All right.
Just let me know when we're on.
We're on right now.
We're on.
And that's going to stay on, too. What did the original book look like?
Well, it was published with paper covers. It wasn't hardbound.
It was a paper cover.
Yes, and the cover wasn't as heavy as the one we put on it.
Uh-huh.
And whenever we found copies, they were all tattered, torn, dog-eared. Usually the covers were completely off and the title page was gone, so we couldn't tell what book it was. It was hard to tell. And those books themselves, with the covers gone, went for about $100. And one in very nice condition went for about $200 because they were so scarce. They were put out in very limited amounts.
I was going to ask you, do you know how many they printed?
A couple
Right, limited
hundred.
amount. A couple hundred, that's
Yeah.
it.
Between 200 and 400, we believe.
They probably were $1 a piece
We
at the
couldn't
time or
find
something.
any documentation that gave an exact figure. It
Mm-hmm.
was done by subscription by the newspaper company at
Mm-hmm.
that time. So only selected people got the book. But people were looking for this book. It was scarce and rare, and they wanted these pictures. They wanted to know about their history of Plattsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
So when we found one in very nice condition, that had been rebound similar to this, not the same color, but a former owner had it rebound himself privately. So it was in such top condition. We found the cover was there, the title page and everything. And when we found out it didn't have a copyright, that it was public domain, we decided that we would republish this book to make it affordable for everyone to have a copy, to learn about the history of Plattsburgh.
That's a very big undertaking.
It was.
And did you have any idea what it was going to cost?
We didn't when we first started, but as we got into it, we realized what a big job it was. It wasn't just putting it on a copier and copying the pages. The book had to be taken all apart, page by page.
You owned it at that time?
Yes.
Okay, you bought the book. Okay.
The printer had to take the book apart, reprint each page. Then we had a photographer who was my brother-in-law work with us, and he reshot all the photographs in the book.
From the book. Was it shiny pages? Then obviously there were good photographs in it.
Yes.
Okay.
But in reprinting, they wouldn't come out as good a quality. So he reshot all the pictures with film, made his own negatives and prints. So then after the printer printed each page, he would have to cut, what he did was cut the windows, cut these out.
Okay.
And place the photograph under there. Then reprint the page again. I think I got it right.
Was it printed locally?
It's very technical. We tried to get it printed locally. At that time, there was only one printing press in Plattsburgh, which was Clinton Press. The estimate turned out too high for us, so we did go to Burlington, Queen City Printers. They gave us a very reasonable estimate.
Right. And how many copies did you have made?
Well, we had 2,500 copies of the paperback, this one right here.
Right.
We had 50 copies, 100 copies of the hardcover, and we had 50 copies of the special deluxe gift edition in a linen box.
Right.
With the Plattsburgh written on there.
Slide covers, I think they call them.
In red Moroccan leather.
And gold.
Gilt edge.
Gilt edge.
With a silk
wow.
book ribbon.
What did this sell for?
This sold for $75.
And?
$25.
And?
$9.95.
Are these all gone now? The hardcovers are
Oh
gone?
yes, the
Those are
hardcovers
gone.
and the leather covers are all gone.
Whatever's in here is also in here.
Oh yes,
Right.
This is just a different binding. It has a special nice end papers, special quality paper. It's better paper than in the paperback. This is
If
cream.
you know, of course, and this, of course, is, you can see here, the binding, you see it's been stitched. Anybody from the northern tier in Sheridan knows that about binding books. And Calvin Wood, probably that they call the rounder backer, that was made by Sheridan, that made these kind of a book. And this is what they call the perfect binding, I think.
Yes.
Right? And where it's glued to the edge. Also made by Sheridan Machines, been doing that for years.
Now, Queen City printed them, but we had a bindery bind these. And it was a bindery in Vermont.
Did they go good in the beginning, right in the beginning? Big deal right in the beginning?
They went slowly. We had some ads, which are over there on the wall. Maybe you'd like to take a shot of those later. We did extensive advertising maybe the first several months. It was quite an expense, and we realized we couldn't keep doing that, so eventually we let word of mouth carry the word, because marketing them was a big job, but we sold them exclusively in our store. So
exclusively here. Now, I would assume that it took you better part of 4, 5, 6 years to get your money back. No, I may be wrong.
Well, we just figured it out, and the original investment to do all this work was $15,000, and as of December '96, we were $26.82 in the black. So it took us 18 years to get our total money back.
Yep.
In the meantime, we paid off the loan a long time ago, but the money slowly came in, but
Yeah.
that wasn't our prime reason for printing the book. We wanted everyone to have a nice copy and be proud of their heritage.
See, what you're hearing now is a person who loves books. You can relate that way back when they had to buy a bookmobile to put some of their collection in. And that's what people want. And we'll take a short break here. But that's what they, and then it wasn't just to make money. And there's still 400 copies. When you sell those, you'll make some money. So we want to sell those 400 copies. And you just, that, as I mentioned before in this tape, it's not the idea we're trying to sell the books. It's for, we want you to buy them so you will have a book of beautiful pictures and the heritage of here in Plattsburgh, New York. And 400 should go within a week. If anybody knows they're here, they really should go. You should have one of these books. $10 is don't even pay a meal. And if you don't get it for yourself, get it for your children, your fathers, your relatives, people who've moved away.
We did some additions to the book.
Did you? All right,
Yeah.
tell us that when we get back.
Okay.
We'll take a break.